During Mother's Day dinner, my sister announced her third pregnancy. Then Dad pointed at me. "You're moving in to help." I walked out. The next morning, the police called. My mother screamed when my sister announced she was pregnant again. Not a happy gasp, an actual scream, the kind you'd expect at a surprise party. Both hands pressed to her mouth like she'd just won something. She hugged Meredith so hard the wine glasses rattled. Then my father pointed at me across a table of 15 people and said, "You're moving in to help." I froze. "What?" My sister laughed, actually laughed, mid-bite of scalloped potatoes, and said, "You have nothing going on anyway." 15 people at that table. My mother, my father, my sister Meredith and her husband Todd, my aunt, my uncle, 4 cousins, 2 of Meredith's in-laws, and me. 15 people, and not one of them said, "Ask her first." I stood up. I walked out without a single word because I already knew that anything I said in that moment would come out as either a scream or a sob, and I wasn't going to give any of them the satisfaction of either. The next morning at 8:52 a.m., my phone rang from a number I didn't recognize. "Good morning, ma'am. This is the police. My name is Sienna Cole. I'm 32. I work from home as a CPA doing tax and small business accounting for 11 regular clients. And up until that Mother's Day dinner, I would have told you my family was, at worst, a little overbearing, loud, traditional, the kind of family where holidays run 3 hours long and somebody always cries by dessert. I'd been living alone in a 1-bedroom apartment on Winslow Avenue for 6 years. 6 years of paying my own rent, building my own client list from scratch, and slowly, quietly becoming the invisible middle daughter in a family that had exactly 2 visible roles, golden child and helper. My sister Meredith is 36, married to a man named Todd Brennan, who works in regional sales, and already has 2 kids, Sophie, who's 7, and Max, who's 4. When Meredith announced her third pregnancy that Sunday, I felt genuinely happy for her. In the uncomplicated way you're happy for a sibling's good news before anyone starts making it about you. I should have seen the setup coming. Looking back, there were signs for weeks. My mother, Carol, had started asking pointed questions about my workload a month earlier. "You work from home, right? Must be nice having all that flexibility." My father, Walter, had mentioned twice, almost offhand, that Meredith and Todd were really struggling with daycare costs. Even my Aunt Patricia, who almost never speaks at family dinners, had given me a strange, sympathetic look the last time we were all together, like she already knew something I didn't. I told myself it was nothing. Families gossip about money. Families worry about each other. I had no idea I was the solution they'd already decided on, weeks before they bothered to ask me. Or rather, weeks before they decided they didn't need to ask me at all. The officer who showed up at my apartment that Monday morning introduced himself as Officer Daniel Reyes, badge number visible, notebook already out. He was polite, almost apologetic, the way officers get when they can tell within 30 seconds that a call was a waste of everyone's time. "We got a welfare check request," he said. "Caller said you might be a danger to yourself, said you weren't responding to texts." I stood in my doorway in yesterday's sweatpants, genuinely stunned. I didn't answer texts because I was upset. "That's it. I'm fine." He looked past me into my apartment, my desk with 3 monitors, my CPA reference binders stacked by subject, a clean kitchen, a coffee mug that said "World's Okayest Accountant" that my client Denise had given me as a joke 2 Christmases ago. "You seem perfectly fine, ma'am," he said, then quieter, almost like he felt bad saying it. "For what it's worth, filing a false welfare report is a misdemeanor in Indiana. Just so you know if this happens again." I told myself it had to be a misunderstanding, maybe a neighbor, maybe a wrong number, a genuine mix-up. My stomach didn't agree with that theory even as I was constructing it. It had already dropped straight through the floor because some part of me already knew exactly who'd made that call, and it wasn't a stranger. For 3 days after that, my phone did not stop. Text after text, voicemail after voicemail, a rotating cast of guilt, thinly veiled threats, and what I can only describe as performance crying, rendered in all caps. My mother: "I don't know why you're punishing this family. Sophie asks about you every day." My sister: "Wow, real mature, walking out like a teenager." My mother again, 4 hours later: "I just want to know you're okay. Is that so wrong?" I told myself I could ride it out. Silence would work. If I just didn't respond, eventually the storm would pass. The way it always had before whenever I'd pushed back on something small, skipping a holiday, declining to loan Meredith money for a car repair 2 years earlier. I'd learned, over 3 decades, that if I waited long enough, my family usually moved on to a new crisis. I was wrong. The storm didn't pass. It escalated. Meredith called on day 2, and I made the mistake of picking up. "Todd's hours got cut," she said. No hello, straight into it. "Daycare's $3,900 a month with a newborn coming. You work from home. You have nothing better to do." "That's not how it works," I said. "I have clients. I have deadlines. I have a life, Meredith." "Sophie already made you a welcome card," she said, like that settled something. "Are you really going to disappoint her?" I hung up. My hands were shaking by the time I set the phone down. Not from anger exactly, more from the specific dizzying vertigo of realizing my niece had been handed a craft project to use as emotional leverage before anyone had bothered to ask me a single real question. My mother called that evening, and within the same phone call went from sobbing to ice cold in a way that used to work on me when I was a teenager, and still worked, apparently, in her mind now. "If you don't come Sunday," she said, voice suddenly flat, "I'll tell everyone you abandoned this family. Tell them whatever you want," I said, and I surprised myself with how steady my voice came out. "I'll be there, and I'll have something to say." She went quiet. It was a strange kind of quiet, not the quiet of someone backing down, but the quiet of someone recalibrating. She'd expected me to cry, to apologize, to fold the way I always had. I could practically hear her deciding what to try next. I tried that same night to fix things the direct way. I called my father, hoping that if anyone in the family could be reasoned with logically, it would be him. It didn't work. 2 days later, my father called. No hello. Just, your mother set up the spare room at Meredith's. Twin beds. Already made up. Bring your things Saturday. I already said no, Dad. I know, he said. That's the problem. He let the silence stretch on the line. The exact same trick he'd used on me since I was 12 years old. The strategic pause designed to make the other person so uncomfortable they'd fill it with a concession just to make it stop. It had worked on me for 20 years. I let the silence sit there instead, unfilled, until he was the one who eventually spoke again, sounding faintly thrown off by the fact that I hadn't caved. Think about your sister, he said finally, and hung up before I could answer. My stomach dropped again, but under it, something else was starting. Something closer to clarity than fear. I sat at my kitchen table that night with a legal pad and started writing down, in plain language, exactly what had actually happened. Not what I felt. What had happened, in order, with dates. I don't know exactly why I did it. I think some part of me already knew I'd need it. I called my Aunt Patricia the next morning, my mother's older sister, the quiet one who always sat in the corner at holidays, the one nobody ever really asked about because nobody seemed curious why she seemed permanently a half step removed from the rest of the family. They did this to me 30 years ago, she said, and her voice had a steadiness in it that told me she'd rehearsed this conversation in her head more than once over the decades. Made me move in and raise Meredith's mother, your mom, through her divorce years. I gave up 3 years of my own life for that family. Nobody ever thanked me. Nobody ever even acknowledged it happened. I sat very still, phone pressed hard against my ear, feeling something shift into place that had never quite made sense before. Why Patricia sat in the corner. Why she flinched slightly whenever anyone brought up family loyalty at dinner. Why she'd given me that strange, sympathetic look weeks earlier. I'll be there Sunday, she told me. I should have done this a long time ago. That same afternoon, my cousin Rachel, Patricia's daughter, close to my age, someone I'd always liked but never been especially close with, sent me a screenshot that made my hands go cold. It was a group text. Meredith, writing to a chain of relatives that didn't include me. Sienna's been weird about my pregnancy. I think she's jealous, TBH. Please don't bring up the baby around her. It might upset her. I read it 3 times. She wasn't protecting my feelings. She was preloading an excuse, building a version of me, in everyone's head, that would make anything I said on Sunday sound like jealousy instead of truth. She was building a cage before I'd even opened my mouth. I want to be clear about something here, because this part of the story isn't about detectives or courtrooms. It's about the quieter machinery of proof, the kind regular people have to build for themselves when the people who are supposed to protect them won't. I called Officer Daniel Reyes's non-emergency line back and asked calmly how to formally document that a welfare check had been called in against me under false pretenses, in case I ever needed it. He confirmed the report was on file, gave me the case number, and told me matter-of-factly that if I ever wanted to pursue the misdemeanor angle for the false report, that documentation would be the starting point. I didn't want to pursue charges. I wanted the paper trail to exist. I spoke briefly with a family law paralegal named Denise Okafor, one of my actual accounting clients as it happened, who works at a small firm downtown and who I trusted enough to ask a quick, informal question over coffee. Could a family legally assign an adult to move in and provide unpaid care without any agreement from that adult? She laughed, not unkindly, and said, no, that's not a legal obligation. That's a family trying to guilt someone into free labor and calling it duty. I printed the screenshot from Rachel. I printed the welfare check case number. I wrote out my 3 key facts on a single piece of paper in plain block letters and folded it into my jacket pocket. Sunday morning, like a soldier carrying orders into a room full of people who thought they already knew how the day would end. Quick pause. If you want more stories like this in better quality, my Spotify's linked in the description. By Sunday afternoon, I had less than an hour before I'd be standing in my parents' backyard in front of 15 people, most of whom had already, thanks to Meredith's group text, been quietly primed to see anything I said as jealousy rather than truth. My hands were cold the entire drive over, gripping the steering wheel too tight at every red light. I kept running the same math in my head. 15 people, 1 folded piece of paper, 1 shot to say this correctly before the narrative hardened around me for good. If I hesitated, if I let my voice shake too much, if I let my mother redirect the conversation the way she always could, I might not get another chance. Family narratives calcify fast once everyone's agreed on a version of events. The backyard smelled like charcoal and cut grass. The grill was smoking. Meredith sat at the center of the table, glowing, one hand resting on her stomach the way pregnant women do when they know people are watching. My mother stood up almost the moment I sat down, wine glass in hand, and said brightly to the whole table, "And we're so blessed that Sienna has agreed to move in and help." She turned and smiled at me like a spotlight swinging into place. "Isn't that right, sweetheart?" Every head at that table turned toward me at once. I felt my pulse in my ears. I didn't smile back. My sister leaned toward me, voice pitched just loud enough for the table to hear. "Seriously, what exactly are you holding on to? A 1-bedroom apartment and a desk job?" My uncle grunted from the far end of the table. "Wouldn't kill you to help out, kid." I stood up. "Can I say something?" My mother visibly relaxed, sitting back down, clearly assuming this was the moment I finally, predictably, agreed. "I need everyone here to hear this," I said, and I was surprised at how level my voice sounded, given how hard my heart was hammering, because some of you have been told things about me that aren't true. The smiles around the table started dying, one by one, like a string of lights going out down the line. "First," I said, "I never agreed to move in. Nobody asked me. I was assigned, in front of 15 people at a dinner without a single conversation beforehand." My mother's mouth opened. I kept going before she could fill the gap. "Second, the morning after Mother's Day, a police officer showed up at my apartment for a welfare check. Someone in this family told them I might hurt myself. That's a documented report, case number on file with the department, because I didn't answer some texts for a few hours while I was upset. My uncle set his beer down slowly on the table. Someone called the cops on you? My mother's face had gone white. Todd looked down at his plate like he badly wanted to be somewhere else. Third, I said, and turned to face my sister directly. You told people in this family that I was jealous of your pregnancy. You said it before I ever said a word to anyone, so that when I finally did speak up, nobody would believe me. You built the excuse before you needed it. That's not, Meredith started. Rachel has the screenshot, I said. Rachel, sitting 2 seats down, didn't look away, didn't flinch, didn't pretend she didn't know what I was talking about. I have it, she said simply. I can show anyone who wants to see it. Meredith's face cracked open in front of the entire backyard, not gracefully, not with some quiet, dignified acknowledgement, but the way a mask actually breaks, all at once, ugly and real. My Aunt Patricia stood up next, her chair scraping hard against the concrete patio. I need to say something, she said, and her voice carried across the whole yard. And I should have said it 30 years ago. The backyard went dead silent, in a way I'd never heard it go silent before, not even during the year my grandfather's will got contested at Thanksgiving. When Carol's marriage fell apart, Patricia said, looking at my mother, I was 26 years old, engaged, with a life I'd been building for myself. This family decided, without asking me, that I would move in and help raise Meredith for 3 years. Nobody thanked me. My engagement ended because he got tired of waiting for me to have a life again. And when I finally came back to myself, this family acted like nothing had happened, like I'd simply taken a little detour. She looked at me. I watched this exact same script get written for Sienna in real time, word for word, and I was not going to sit in the corner again and let it happen to someone else. My mother, for the first time in my entire life, had nothing to say. Not a comeback, not a counter-accusation, not even tears. Just a long, stunned silence that stretched across a backyard full of relatives who were finally looking at the pattern instead of at me. Todd finally spoke quietly to Meredith. You told me she offered. Meredith didn't answer him. Nothing about that Sunday afternoon involved handcuffs or courtrooms, and I want to be honest that this wasn't that kind of story, but the consequences were real and they were lasting, in the specific currency families actually deal in: trust, obligation, and who gets believed the next time. My mother, over the following weeks, tried twice more to reframe the story. First as me overreacting. Then, when that didn't land with anyone who'd been in the backyard, as a misunderstanding about the welfare check that she eventually, quietly, stopped bringing up altogether once I mentioned, calmly, that the case number was still on file with the department if anyone wanted to review it. My relationship with Meredith didn't repair itself into something warm. It settled instead into something smaller and more honest. Occasional texts, birthday calls, nothing pretending to be closer than it actually is. Todd, for his part, apologized to me privately a month later, admitting he hadn't known about the welfare check at all and had believed Meredith's version of events completely until that Sunday. I believed him. I didn't fully forgive the not asking, but I believed him. My father never apologized directly, as that's not something he does, but he stopped calling with instructions after that day, and the spare room at Meredith's stayed made up with nobody in it. Patricia and I talk every week now. She told me, a few months later, that saying what she said in that backyard was the first time in 30 years she'd felt like herself at a family dinner, instead of a ghost sitting in the corner. It's been just over a year since that Mother's Day dinner. Meredith had her third baby, a boy, healthy and loud, and I sent a gift and a card, and I meant it. I never moved in. Todd found part-time evening work to cover the daycare gap, and they made it work the way families actually do, when nobody's being quietly volunteered without their consent. I still work from home, still have my 11 clients, still drink coffee out of the world's okayest accountant mug, which has become something like a small private joke between me and myself now. A reminder that nothing going on was never true. It just wasn't visible to people who'd stopped looking. Patricia and I have dinner together most Sundays now, just the two of us. No grill smoke, no folded piece of paper in my jacket pocket. We don't talk about that backyard much anymore. We don't really need to.